I was down the hall. My Ellen needs to save those questions.
That's why I came.
There
I
we
was
go.
interested with it. I don't really much about. I just have some vague idea of what it is, but you know what I mean.
Well, I'll go ahead and get started. Let me unmute this if
How
it's.
many people are out
Yeah, welcome everybody. I know this. Hey, yeah, okay. Well, it's nice to see you again. And everybody online, nice to see you guys as well, or not see you. So just for anybody who hasn't online met me before, my name's Evan Weiss. A little bit of the background of why I'm talking about this. I don't consider myself an expert in AI, but I've been using it quite a bit in my job. I work in marketing for a large company, and we're doing a lot with AI. We're actually exploring a lot more with AI now. And uh, and so I know it's a big hot button issue, a hot button topic for a lot of people because they're wondering, what is it? Does it matter? Is it going to change the way I do things? Is it going to change the way work, home, school does things? And so I found this presentation from MIT that sums up AI a lot better than I was planning on it. And then I'm going to go through this presentation. We'll talk about it. We'll answer questions as they come up. Um, I'll give you some questions a lot of people are asking right now from the community, from the IT community, about AI. And then afterwards, I have three examples of what AI can look like today in a common workplace, home life type of experience. Some pretty cool ones, actually.
and how far is this going to go?
We'll talk about it because it could go quite far. Um, so just to kind of give you some examples of what's we're gonna talk about. So we're going to talk about what is artificial intelligence and actually identify it because it matters. And then we're also going to talk about something called machine learning, which is separate and oftentimes confused between AI and machine learning. Those two things go hand in hand, but they're often confused with each other. We'll talk about some examples of AI. We'll talk about problems that can come up that AI potentially could solve. We'll talk about some bad things about AI because there are quite a few, and then we'll talk about how we can use it responsibly, or that's what the doctor that created this talks about, and I'll show you what that looks like. So it's important to always define new technologies because you want to make sure that you're in that Venn diagram of the technology that you're creating, that it's called the right thing. It has parameters to it. So when we think of AI, AI is the ability for a computer to think for itself, to learn and simulate human mental processes such as perceiving, reasoning, and learning. It can also independently perform complex tasks that once required human input. So, in a sense, AI is the thing that thinks. So, when we think about Alexa, when we think about Siri, they have been given parameters so they can think for themselves to some degree. Maybe not as complex as we do, with as much perception, perspective as we have, but within the scope of what they've learned,
So
they're able to tell.
program.
Exactly.
Oh,
Now, what's important is the machine learning aspect of it. So, machine learning is the action of teaching a machine how to think. So, if AI is Alexa, machine learning is all of the questions that we ask her for her to get more advanced and know us better.
so when I saw a program when they did the soccer,
Mhm.
and then the soccer team, then they stopped programming,
Yeah.
and the soccer and the little things that are part of the computer, all of a sudden decided what to do and could do it as a team.
So
Because
that
was AI, right?
that is AI. The machine learning is us programming all the things it uses to make those actions happen on its own.
So then it did it on its own, but they were
Yeah.
surprised at the time that they did it on
Correct.
its own.
Yeah. So what this is although the term artificial intelligence and machine learning are frequently used interchangeably, machine learning is a smaller section of a larger category, which is AI. AI, artificial intelligence, signifies a computer's general ability to mimic human thought or carry on human actions. Machine learning implies that technologies and algorithms that allow a system to recognize patterns. So machine learning is pattern recognition and teaching a machine how to recognize patterns. AI is the ability for it to kind of move forward and think on its own.
That's what soccer things did.
Yeah, machine learning
without the people telling.
Correct. So if we think about it, I always like to think in this capacity for machine learning and for AI thought process. So imagine you were using a recipe to cook a meal. Machine learning is teaching you to go step by step in order. AI is having 1,000 recipes and going, I have chicken, spinach, and feta. What can I make? Make it for me. So machine learning is creating the recipes and teaching it how to work through those recipes. AI is, okay, I have the ingredients. Now make something for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when we look at this, Jetsons, yeah, Rosie, right? So three examples that this brings to mind. So AI can be used for a lot of stuff. Virtual assistants, so Alexa, Siri, Google, all that stuff. Autonomous vehicles, because what we're doing is we're actually making the decision making of driving, turn left, turn right, swerve out of the way of a moving pedestrian. All of those choices, all of that decision making, we're putting in the hands of a machine, or at least some of it. Yeah. Chatbots, well, we'll look at some of those. E-commerce, so shopping. You might have noticed that now a lot of websites will have a little virtual assistant that pops up and says, hey, I noticed you were looking at this. Here's a link to more information on it. Here's some links to similar options. And generally what this falls under are a couple key things, which is recommendation systems, navigation systems, facial recognition, or the ability to unlock or open, and then also text editors, which is my personal favorite. I'll show you one of my personal favorites in just a minute. So this is a good example of where AI is in the common census of people. So if I say AI to a lot of people, this is probably what they'll think of. So this is Sophia. She's a humanoid robot that was made, and she has a program inside of her called Sophia that is a actual AI assistant or an AI program that has been taught many things across the scope of human existence, and also used machine learning to teach her how to think for herself.
So that's what they're worried about when they talk about musicians talk about that, and actresses talk about that they'll take a robot and do the things with their face on.
So we'll talk about that because that is a consideration. I would say it's going to be a little different. The worry that a lot of people have is a little different, but we'll touch on that in just a minute. So what are the problems AI can solve? These are four of them. It's not the only four, but it's probably the four that we'll see happen the soonest. So first is cybersecurity. So right now, what tends to happen, and to be fair, cybersecurity is also the opposite is true, that cybersecurity AI will attempt to break cybersecurity just as much as it'll attempt to fix or prevent cybersecurity attacks. But what we're using right now and what will continue to evolve is the ability for the system to kind of check for itself if everything's okay. So I like to think of this as if you had a guard dog, not just in the house, but at every window and door that really knew stranger from family member, you would obviously feel a lot safer. And that's the goal with AI, is to teach it even better to check all the doors, to check all the locks, to know what's bad and what's not. So AI can do that because what we're finding out is that if we teach AI to work and it has enough power, it has enough brain capacity it can check a lot of stuff really, really quickly. So where before we might detect a cybersecurity attack from another country or from another company in the matter of minutes, we can now do it in a matter of microseconds or milliseconds. Another is healthcare. So one of the beautiful things about AI is its ability to be a pattern recognition machine. So for health records, it can do a lot with that. So one of the big things with AI, why it's so valuable, is because AI can be self-contained. AI isn't generally just a big thing on the internet that kind of sweeps up information as it goes. It is a self-contained program. And as it gets taught things, that's how it learns. And so the nice thing is with HIPAA compliance and healthcare records, we can teach it to look for things like inaccuracies in data or inaccuracies in dating, and make it find any healthcare inaccuracies or healthcare record mishaps, and actually teach it how to fix those or at least identify them and notify people of their existence. So where this can be really valuable is in medication requests. So I, as a doctor, put in a medication script, and it goes to my health to the customer, the patient's medical record. AI might be able to detect, oh, nope, that's going to be a problem because they're allergic to this, or yeah, they're already taking this medication. Absolutely, absolutely, and it's just going to get to a larger scale and more advanced. What that could mean is that down the line, what it might be able to do is say, okay, here's the medical records for this patient over the course of 10 years. It can actually solve what they have because it knows, well, they had this appointment at this date for these symptoms over and over again across the 10-year span. It can calculate that stuff and come up with a scenario of what the medical condition might be based on their medical history. So really cool stuff there. So research, idea generation, finding data. We'll talk about this quite a bit when I show you the tools that I have available, because what's happening now is this sense of curation. And this is where I think AI is going to be the most helpful for us in the next 5 years. After that could be a whole lot of other stuff. But for the next 5 years, one of the ideas I personally recommend is that AI will be most useful for being able to create content so that we can curate it. So as an example, if I'm doing research on cancer and I put in a large data set of patients, of their appointments, of their illness progression, and ultimately the medications that they were using, I can actually push that into AI. It can analyze everything and give me a nice output of data saying, hey, these are the things that pop up for us on what's matching and what's consistent. And so with researching new ideas, researching data, analyzing data, and even creating visuals to go along with that data, AI is very, very good at spitting stuff out very, very. I think back to the days when we were still using punch card computers. And that was a whole new scenario because I could put in a punch card and it would output data in the matter of hours or even minutes in some cases. And I think we're on the precipice of the next step in that generation, which is in just a second, I can take all this data that's been done over the course of years or even centuries and push it through and get an immediate response of the result. Pretty interesting. Now, transportation, I actually don't think self-driving cars is the cool thing.
No.
Personally. I think self-driving cars is a means to an end for the past 10 years using something that's going to be in the next 10 years. Where I see AI driving, no pun intended, the future here is actually in mass transit. Because AI-driven cars is fine, but it's not solving any problem. It's just making it easier to drive. Yeah, sometimes causing more, but mass transit, creating more complex transit systems that offer more distance, more stops, more consistency, that can be a huge benefit. And where I see that benefiting greatly are medium-sized cities. So a city like New York, LA, Chicago, they have their transit system. They can make it a little bit better and they could do more with it, but ultimately they're inlaid. Until something drastic changes, those are probably going to stay the same. Yeah. But if you think about Cincinnati, Milwaukee, medium-sized cities that are not necessarily fully invested in one mass transit system, they can actually start building and upgrading their transit system at a fairly low cost, because they don't have to take away any infrastructure that's not there already. So could be interesting to see what AI does for them. So advantages, kind of four things that pop up right now. One is image and facial recognition. So you may have seen online something that says CAPTCHA or prove you're human, powered by AI. and it says, all right, pops up. Yeah, are you a robot? Well, what the reason that is because AI has the ability to fake that out and get into your accounts depending on the security of that account. So the reason that they're showing you pictures of buses or stop signs, things like that, is because there's usually things that make AI kind of fuss with it and not really be as accurate. So AI's ability to understand facial images, map images, and understand them and do something with them is pretty intensely good. Uh, Medical diagnosis. So again, taking a lot of data and turning it into a predictive analytics of what might be happening is a really big benefit of AI. Customer service. Unfortunately, to nobody's surprise, if you go to a grocery store or a retail chain, your questions are probably not going to be uniquely yours. Somebody has asked that question before in most cases. And so with repetitive tasks, customer service is a really great place for AI to take ownership. So as an example, FedEx, UPS, DHL, all of the shipping services, everybody wants to do the same thing, check a package, lost in transit, things like that. And so customer service offers the ability to give people better service more consistently without having to worry about hiring people. It's going to be a benefit. And then recommendation systems. One of the perfect examples of this is in the automotive industry. So right now, if you go to buy a car, any car website, any dealership website that you go to will have a little assistant because everybody wants to know the same thing. How much does the vehicle cost? How much mileage does it have? Has it been in an accident? It's all consistent across the board. So recommendation systems is another one where AI, you're going to see that be a huge part of recommendation systems like that for the future. So disadvantages, very important. So this is a really good breakdown of some of the things that are happening right now. First is lack of transparency. So a lot of generative AI. So if we talk about generative AI, that's any AI that helps me make images, text, documents, things like that.
What actors were worried about.
Correct.
That's what politicians are worried
Correct.
about.
Yeah, so this is the ability for it to actually generate images, generate video, things like that. And the lack of transparency comes from the idea that we don't know if it's being generated by AI or by a real person. And because of that, the other parts of this, I'm going to skip a little bit, is dependence on AI and job replacement. So because I can't tell if it's AI or not, I also can't tell if my job's important or not because it might be replaced by AI generating the content that I make currently. So that's the worry.
Okay, but when you look at something and you're not sure if it's a human or if it's a robot or whatever,
sure,
facial thing. That's what you're worried about when you talk about politics right now. I mean, I've heard this.
Yeah. So the issue is a couple things, which is lack of transparency. Obviously, we want to know who's real and who's AI made.
Can you tell the difference?
Sometimes not. The other issue is going to be honesty and bias. So it says that their ethical dilemmas, bias and discrimination, things like that. So a good example is I could use AI to generate a video of a famous celebrity acting in the movie that I want them to, and never pay them for it.
Because I listen to French news on TV.
Sure.
And at the end of their segments, at the end of the day, there's a lady who tells you if it's true or if it's a false, and she'll tell you if and how it's why they can tell it's different.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
She can tell if it's a person or a robot, or if it's been documented or changed, or
sure
to do something that shouldn't be.
Yeah. So the ethical dilemmas of AI are kind of exposing themselves now. And we'll talk about what companies are doing to combat that in just a minute. A couple of other ones, security risks. So just as much as AI can help with security, we can also teach it to break security pretty easily. So it is going to be able to do processes like that pretty quickly. So just as much as it's going to help, it's also potentially going to hurt. Concentration of power. Where I think they were going with this is the idea that if I'm a company, a large company with a lot of money, a lot of capital, that has the developers, has the software engineers to create really powerful AI tools, it's going to concentrate that power to them to control things like content creation, content editing, marketing, things like that. So how we think, but also how we buy. Um, Dependence on AI and job displacement. So I think what we'll see, and this is just me personally from the little bit that I've dug into it, I think what we'll see in the next 5 to 10 years is the idea of curation, like I mentioned before. So AI is going to take the place of a lot of jobs, or at least a lot of tasks that are repetitive. So a good example of that is my own job. So right now, one of my jobs is to create marketing materials for internal company campaigns. So news flyers about events that are coming up, birthdays, things like that. That stuff AI can make in a heartbeat, no issues, really easy to do. And so that if that was my only job, I'd be out of a job. Where I think it'll be fine is AI can't make curated content. So if I ask it to make a picture of a dog sitting in a field, it can do that. But if I ask it to make a picture of a dog in a field with a Nike logo on it and with specific Air Jordans or a specific shoe, it can't do that because it can't use branded material because of copyrights, and it can't use likenesses of real people in an ethical environment.
But it could do it if it wanted to.
It could do it if it was able to. Yes. So that's where displacement of AI, job displacement comes up. Is we have to put guardrails in place to make sure it's doing what we ask it to. We're starting to. So one of the things you'll see is if you go to any AI conference, any IT conference, anything to do with AI right now, the number one thing that they're asking people to do is set up frameworks. So rules, responsibilities, checks and balances to understand when we're teaching AI to do stuff, what we're allowed to teach them and what is not allowed or advised to teach them. And so what will happen is standards, either governmental standards or corporate standards, will be put in place.
Will regulate them eventually?
I think government will probably regulate aspects of it. More often than not, it will probably be regulated by companies so that they have a fair shot at making money.
Okay, so when soldiers go out and they use those robots to shoot to so forth.
Sure.
They're go way back, whatever it is. That's AI.
No. Oh. That is machine learning. And the reason that's so specific is because I'm not telling a machine in current use, I'm not saying, hey, machine, go out and decimate this base. I am saying, hey, soldiers, go out, use AI assisted or machine learning assisted weapons to target the right people. And so there's still a human involved in that decision making. The difference is it's more of a system.
Isn't it doesn't whatever we're going to do with this, isn't it originally human input to it?
To some degree, it's a series of data that we put the data
in. So yeah, we as humans are inputting the data.
Yeah, and we're responsible for ultimately what it's going to learn. Now, what it does with that data is based on the computations that it does. So a good example is that the medical recording stuff, right?
About those soccer things that they.
So that is more generative AI. So it's literally just them making a picture.
They left them alone. They came back to playing.
Yeah.
Without them even starting the machine up to.
Yeah, so it's a game.
They started to play by themselves. They were doing things that they had never told them to do.
Sure.
They were working as a team. And they had not done that.
Yeah, and so that's AI, and that's the blossoming of more decisions because of decisions that are made before. So it's all decisions. It's yes or no's put together, and if it gets to enough yeses and nos, it can expand, and that's AI. That's the ability to expand and do more. So that's what
this thing did. It expanded and became the room. It had already started playing a game, and they didn't even turn on the lights in the room in the end.
Potentially, yeah.
And so they were thinking for themselves.
Sure, to some degree, yeah, within a box, a sandbox at the moment. So, yeah, so when we talk about using AI responsibility, generally a couple of key things come up often, which is putting people first, making sure people are at the center of it. So both in making sure people are responsible and in control of what's being learned by the AI. Minimize unintended bias, so trying to not put in information into that equation that is biased to begin with. Consider data privacy, obviously very important. We want to make sure that the data that's collected is the right data with the right amount of privacy. And then the last and certainly not least is ensuring that whatever you do with AI, it is earmarked as AI or using AI to the best degree that it can be. So going forward, you'll probably start seeing logos for AI usage, whether that's a Google logo or Amazon logo, things like that. So you'll probably starting to see more logos saying powered by AI, powered by Google, powered by Alexa. As you see that, that's kind of a transparency mark.
And my Alexa talks.
Yeah, and as you ask her more questions, she'll learn more and be able to do more for you. Yeah. So a couple of other things that they recommended. So I'll just read these off. So AI can help do repetitive work for humans, but humans should still be prioritized, creating a culture that utilizes creativity, empathy, dexterity from humans and AI for increased efficiency. Businesses should adopt strong security measures, limit access to sensitive data, and anonymize data whenever possible. There has to be fairness in AI, which entails identifying and eliminating discrimination while also encouraging diversity and inclusion. So again, if biased data is already put in at the very start, it's going to be biased every step of the way. And then last but not least is developing explainable AI that is visible across processes and functions. So at every step, we need to be able to tell what the AI is doing, how it's thinking, why it's thinking the way it is, and that there is AI present.
Can you stop from learning?
You can, to some degree. You can put up roadblocks in that learning mechanism.
Or can you dysfunction?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So that was their presentation. Before we go to the questions, I wanted to show a couple examples of generative AI, which is probably the most notable thing that you can do right now. So the first is pretty well known at this point across news channels, which is ChatGPT. ChatGPT is an Alexa type of interface where you can ask it and talk to it, and it'll do stuff for you. I use it pretty much every day. It's really, really nice and very useful. So I'm going to give you an example of what AI can do just with a one sentence. Give me a sermon for a family service about Jewish values and honoring your family. Pretty simple. If you asked a rabbi to do it, they might take a day or two to write that out. This is what it'll look like. Yeah. It even puts in Hebrew. Granted, it's alliterated Hebrew, but it's still Hebrew.
And it had shalom at the beginning.
Correct. So, yeah, so pretty incredible stuff for, asking it to write a sermon. And this is based on some standard internet data that it is accumulated. It has the scope of the internet at its disposal, but it is a contained unit. So it's not going out and searching the internet. It's using stores of information that's already scanned.
Kids can write, college kids go in and write thesis.
100%. Yeah, and there's actually AI for teachers to tell them whether it was written by AI or not. So that's a really fun thing that's happening now. So this is an example. Now, here's the crazy part is I can interact with this data. So let me, can you make that one paragraph? And now let's try something else. Find me a couple words to link to this paragraph. So if I wanted to put this online and then put some tags in on YouTube, it'll give me that. And then let's do one more. Show me how to read Hebrew. And this is what I use it for more than anything. So I constantly am finding out about new stuff to do, new projects to work on. And so instead of going online and trying to do the research myself, I ask ChatGPT to teach me how to do something. It shows me where I need to go and the general information, and it gives me more ideas of where I need to go specifically and increases my learning about 10 times, which is pretty incredible. So that's ChatGPT. Very, very useful. Now let's look at another one, which is personally the one I use the most, Adobe Firefly. So this is generative AI at its core, which is here's an idea, show me a picture of it. So I'll give you an example. Stained glass window, Hebrew lettering with multiple watercolor style panels. Light shining through the background. So pretty specific. Now from here, I can just leave it at that and see what it generates. Let's go ahead and do that. This should be interesting.
Why is your computer smoking?
Here it goes. Pretty good. Not bad. But we can take it a step further and we can tell it a little bit more about what we want. So I want this to be a photo or art. I'm going to choose art. I can upload an image if I have something similar that I want to create. But let's say I want this to be technique. Let's do acrylic paint. And let's go to materials. And I want this to be made of, yeah, let's do metal. That should be interesting. So I can add those elements to it and regenerate the image, and let's see what comes up. So in just a matter of seconds, instead of having to commission somebody to paint me something that might work or might not, I have a couple of choices right in a matter of seconds. Now, is this going to be perfect and is it exactly what I'm looking for? Maybe not, but I can keep generating until I get to the thing that I need, or I can get more specific in my wording for the description. So that's generative AI. So right now I'm doing that with a photo, but in the future and even right now, I can do that with videos, voices, music, text, fonts, 3D images, 3D objects, or even virtual reality. Pretty incredible. And then the one I probably use, I know I said I use the other stuff the most, but this is probably the one that's been most useful for me is Grammarly, which is generative AI for uh, 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 review suggestions and copy editing. So here I have a paragraph that I took from a ChatGPT sermon that I created. And so from here, I can go in and I can actually change the grammar, but I can also change the voicing myself without having to do anything myself. So I'm going to go ahead and click improve it. Let's try that again. I think it's because I already did it. There we go. So it's going to work on improving it in general. So there we go. So I'll read the first one and then the improved version. So in conclusion, the story of Moses offers us a blueprint for living a life of faith and purpose. It reminds us that true greatness lies not in the pursuit of power or wealth, but in our commitment to justice, compassion, and righteousness. As we reflect on his journey, maybe we be inspired to walk boldly in the footsteps of our ancestors, trusting the divine guidance that lights our path and leads us towards the promised land of peace, prosperity, and spiritual fulfillment. So already pretty good. And so the Improve It says the story of Moses provides us with a model for leading life that is driven by faith and purpose. It reminds us that true greatness is not achieved through the pursuit of power, but rather through the commitment to justice, compassion, and righteousness. So we can already tell there's a little bit of a shift in the language or the emotion behind those, and I can actually fix that. So I can shorten it, and I can do more with it. So if I wanted to shorten it, I could, but let me say I want it to be more empathetic. There we go. So as we come to the end of the story, let us reflect on how the life of Moses can inspire us to lead a life of faith and purpose. So I can actually voice this differently just using AI. So let's try it again. So let's say we want to make it persuasive, like I'm trying to get somebody to convert. So now it says the story of Moses provides us with a powerful blueprint for living a life of true greatness. It teaches us the success is not found through pursuit of power, but in our commitment to justice, compassion, and righteousness. As we reflect on his journey, let us be inspired to follow in the footsteps, walking boldly. So already a little bit more oomphy, a little bit more confident.
Isn't this fun?
Do any of these tools have a cost, or are they free?
Everything I'm using right now has a cost, but has like a free trial and a free version. So right now, ChatGPT is free. Grammarly is completely free, but it gives you a certain number of prompts or a certain number of actions that you could take per month. Adobe Firefly is not free because Adobe is Adobe.
They don't do anything.
Correct. There is a free trial of it that is pretty limited, but you can do it. But Adobe Firefly is kind of their backbone application, so it's not going to be free for very long. So those are some examples of how AI is being used today.
So what happens is, so say we're taking, starting up now.
Sure.
Then somebody will take this and put it towards what their version, whatever their
sure
political thing is.
Sure.
Which could be true or not true.
Well, that's the thing. It's like any other writing, right? If somebody writes something today without AI, it could be true or not true. So in that sense, AI is no different. Where this is interesting is when we get to persuading people that are being honest about what we're writing. So a good example of that.
How do you know if it's true or not true when you look at something?
You don't. But just like stuff without AI, right? I could go into Photoshop and Photoshop myself on the Eiffel Tower. AI can do the same. The difference is how long it took me to do it, or the ability to do it. So AI isn't responsible for honesty. It's responsible for the amount of time it takes to generate the thing, whether it's honest or not. So the reason why we're putting in guidelines from company standpoint is because generally AI is just a tool to make things faster, more efficient, more accessible, what have you. But ultimately, people are still responsible for what AI is doing, if that makes sense. So with that, any other questions that I can answer, you or Mark, please feel free. I'll mention this for people online. If you do have additional questions, you can always email me at eweiss317@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to answer. But otherwise, any questions?
Explain to me why the Actors Guild was so concerned about this.
And can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So the question was, why is the Actors Guild so worried about this? So there's a couple things. There's a couple layers to it. I'll address the three kind of main ones. So the first is script writing. So I can tell AI, hey, write a script about this, this, and this, and it'll do it for me. So that's one. So script writing is going to be way faster, way easier.
So
potentially. Or they'll only use humans to curate the scripts that are being generated. Potentially. The second is actors. So I can take a likeness of somebody and map it into a movie without them actually getting paid for that work. So that's strike two.
So they're going to put their face on something in general.
Correct. The third is I don't even need actors because I can just animate stuff that's so realistic looking that I don't need actors anymore, and now they're out of a job. So that's three. So AI has the potential of replacing a lot of creative elements. Where at the moment where AI falls short is in creativity. It's only as creativity as it's excuse me, it's only as creative as we have made it to be. And generally it's median. So it takes all this data that we give it and makes the most common, most likely scenario for that. And so if you were asking it to write a quick script for a commercial, it could probably do it. But to do a 2 hour movie that's incredibly creative, incredibly thrilling, incredibly exciting, it's going to be the lowest common denominator. It's going to be the easiest road to get there. And ultimately, it's going to be the worst movie you ever saw. And so
but it's moving so fast that this technology.
It could. Not currently, but it you know, it's getting there for sure. Where I think the limit is going to be is in that curation period where there's still going to be have to be a human at the end of the road saying, hey, that was good, that was bad, that was okay, that was not great, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. Now, the fun thing, just to get your mind wiggling on this, is now Adobe and a lot of other creative companies that are using AI are creating AI basically chains. So I have an AI that generates content. I have an AI that looks at that content and decides if it's good or not. And then I have another AI that looks at that AI's decisions and decides whether that was the right decision or not. And as they build AIs on top of each other, they start getting better at dealing with that. And that's what and that could be an issue.
Not just in that industry, but
in most, in most industries. Yeah.
It's like when I used to read contracts.
Yeah.
And put the stuff on the computer and then bring out
yeah.
to build it up.
Yeah, and I think that's where we'll see the industry changes happen is when computers really first started to be commercially successful with IBM and with Apple, we saw jobs change. We didn't see the jobs get replaced. We saw the job changed from typist to copy editor, right? So the job changed to deal with the fact that there's computers now. So instead of a typist typing everything out and dictating everything, now we might have a voice assistant that does that. And instead, you have somebody curating that content and managing that content. So the jobs might change, but ultimately there are still going to be jobs. They just might shift a bit because of AI. Yeah. And that's it. That's all I have. So I hope that was interesting. I hope that was somewhat helpful. It's obviously still very growing industry, so there'll be more.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank everybody.
Thanks everybody online. Like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. If you see me in Temple or feel free to email.